Yo, what's up? Apologies in advance if my voice is incredibly hoarse. It's been super cold out and I was out for a while earlier and I got back and my voice was like completely gone. It's mostly back by now, so I should be able to record this, but I don't know how much the mic is gonna pick it up, so hopefully it's not too bad. Anyway, I have kind of been known over the course of my channel's lifespan to have a couple odd choices regarding broken hardware and more namely, not replacing the broken hardware. The big one being my keyboard with my missing arrow keycaps. That has been the focus point of a number of comments, many of which I have actually replied to, and I've talked about my arrow keycaps a number of times, but people do still ask, so that's the big one. I also have a stick of bad RAM, and unfortunately a second stick seems to be on the way, so that really sucks. I think I just got a bad pack of RAM for whatever reason. I also have a tripod right in front of me that this camera is on right now that is held together by duct tape and the hope that it does not collapse on me. It's like the leaning tower of tripod right here. I also have my main camera lens, which no longer has autofocus. Luckily, my secondary camera lens, which is what I'm filming this on right now, does still have autofocus, but yeah, my main lens is exclusively to manual focus, which actually kind of sucks, but all of this stuff, I mean, the obvious thing to get out of the way, yes, I could afford to replace this. I mean, barring the RAM situation, considering RAM prices have skyrocketed to my knowledge recently, so that sucks for anybody trying to get RAM, but I mean, I could just pull out my couple bad sticks of RAM and just leave 32 gigs of working RAM, and that would be good enough, but everything else, I mean, I could afford to replace, either get something decent or cheap for everything else, so that's the main question out of the way. The secondary question being, am I just lazy? Am I just, can't be bothered to fix my broken stuff? And I would dismiss that as well, since generally I'm a pretty non-lazy person. I mean, everybody's a little bit lazy sometimes, but I generally do fix stuff that I need to fix. I actually enjoy repairing stuff. I'm not super good with hardware or anything like that, but I do enjoy the process of repairing an item, especially, computer related stuff and getting it working again. I like that. It's fun. But I've made the choice to not repair the various things that are sort of halfway broken in my setup. So why haven't I made that choice? Well, I have a couple of reasons for this, and I'm going to go through the reasons, I guess, in order of most obvious to weirdest and boldest reasoning, I'll put it like that. To start with, the obvious reasoning that I'm sure many of you also have this reasoning with regards to your own setups and your own tech. I don't want to throw out or get rid of tech that is mostly functional. If something is still functional enough to the point where I can use it as I need to, then it's good enough. I'm not going to throw it out and just buy something new just because, some tiny thing that I have to work around is gone. Case in point being my keyboard here, right? My arrow keys, I can just rebind to these keys up here, and honestly, it does force me to use Vim key bindings more, and it's funny because a lot of people suggested that maybe I just pulled off my arrow keys just to force myself to learn the Vim bindings, which, man, I kind of wish I could say that. Maybe I should just start saying that from now on, and anybody who gets to my channel in the future won't know the real reason that my arrow keys, my one key is actually broken. They'll just think that I pulled off the keycaps so that I could do Vim key bindings better. That would be really funny, but no, this one key on the side actually is broken, and I just pulled off the others so that way I don't have the muscle memory of going to these arrow keys and then I try to hit the key and then it's broken. So yeah, I have them rebound, but I have actually used Vim key bindings more because of that, so that much is true. Something else that, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, my mic has pretty bad background noise. That's actually why I got it for so cheap, I later found out. It is a Blue Yeti, which for its price range is generally considered to be a pretty good microphone, but unfortunately this particular Blue Yeti has incredibly bad background noise, which was actually a pretty big problem in some of the earliest videos I did when I had just gotten this new mic. But I've figured out the solution for it, which is just keeping it a little bit closer, a little bit lower gain, and then just apply an FFmpeg noise filter and just get the right settings for that, and it should sound pretty good. So the audio you're listening to right now should have the FFmpeg filter applied to it, and it should sound pretty decent. So that works well enough, and that kind of brings me to segue into my next key point here that I want to make, which is that being comfortable with discomfort is actually a good thing in the long term. At least for me personally, I've found it to be a really good thing overall. So to give you an example here, right, with my microphone, well, I had to learn a lot more about audio than I would have had to if I just had some perfect microphone on like a boom arm and everything and I didn't have to touch it. And I think it's pretty good for somebody who is making YouTube videos to know a little bit more about audio. I think that was something that was worth it for me to learn. And having a partially broken microphone forced me to pursue that and learn a little bit more about it. So I am happy this microphone is a little bit broken. I mean, I'm happy because I got it for cheaper, despite not realizing that was why. But beyond that, I'm happy that it forced me to, rabbit hole down audio a little bit to learn more about how it works and why I should filter it correctly and have everything set up correctly, all that. Same thing really applies to my lens that no longer autofocuses. It only manually focuses, meaning when I, am doing videography related stuff, that actually does kind of suck. Like if I'm trying to get a tracking shot on something, that can be very, very hard to do. But I think that's a really good skill to learn, honestly. Like I think if you're trying to take videography seriously, which I have been trying to in the past several months at least, I think it's good to be able to manually focus stuff. Same thing with photography. Using manual focus in photography is definitely something you should know how to do because it makes you think outside the box with your shots. If you're relying on autofocus for everything, you're likely going to have the same autofocus point at all times, and then you're just naturally going to go for whatever is in focus at that particular point. Whereas if you're on manual focus, you're going to be thinking about, okay, what do I really want in focus in this image? Like, I have a lot more of an extended range when I'm not bound by that, oh, my autofocus point is there already, so I can just go ahead and get that shot, right? So I actually view that as a good thing, and because of that, I haven't even really thought about replacing my lens yet. I might eventually, just for the sake of getting better video quality at some point, but like, I actually kind of view that as a blessing in disguise, Now, with my bad RAM sticks on my PC, I will say, yeah, that one is pretty annoying. At first, it was mysterious crashes that I didn't know why were happening, and then I realized that, oh man, it must be RAM again, because, I have mentioned this before. Some of you might remember that, I had a laptop a very long time ago that had, it had broken RAM, and it's a whole story, but anyways, long story short, I am, like, cursed with having bad RAM sticks for some reason. But anyways, like, it took a couple crashes with like very little information on the crash before I was like, this has to be the RAM. And lo and behold, I booted up memtest and yes, it was the RAM. So I guess I am kind of grateful that, once again, I'm learning more about RAM and how it works, and I am quite used to using memtest at this point, and I feel like that is kind of a valuable skill to have, especially if you're working with or using computers. I don't work directly on computers. I don't develop, but I use computers for work. I always try to think about like, how should I phrase this so that I can convey what I'm trying to convey here. That said, anyways, so I actually find, having bad RAM, okay, yes, that's a little bit of an annoyance, and yes, I probably at some point will either pull it out or replace it eventually when RAM prices go down. But, like, it's not that bad, and maybe that's sort of the bigger takeaway here, right? Like, it's not that bad. It's good to have a little bit of discomfort in your life. It's good to have a little bit of stuff where, like, yeah, you're gonna have to do, some workaround to get something working, or you're gonna have to just deal with, some small inconvenience, because that kind of trains you for the larger inconveniences that you might not, have a way out of or have a way around. And it's the same logic as people who tell you to take cold showers, as much as that's like totally a meme, right? Like, I mean, I don't take cold showers, honestly, but hey, maybe I'll try that at some point. But the point being of taking a cold shower, like, it's supposed to expose you to discomfort for like a few minutes, so that way, once you've dealt with that discomfort, you're more prepared for other pieces of discomfort in your life that maybe you won't have as much control over. So in principle, that makes total sense to me, and I guess, having some broken stuff around and just dealing with it being broken instead of going through the effort of, buying a new piece of hardware or repairing it or whatever, just instead choosing to deal with that it's slightly broken, is my form of, like, taking cold showers for discomfort. I don't know. That's kind of funny when I put it like that, but you hopefully get the point that I'm trying to make. And, this isn't a whole advice of, like, oh, you should go do this the way I'm doing it, since I never really mean that sort of thing. Like, I do things my way because it works best for me, and if it makes sense for you to do it my way, then sure, go ahead. If it makes sense for me to do things your way instead, then, I'm open to changing my habits if it makes sense to do so. But that being said, I'm not really preaching to anybody with this one. I think this is sort of, I guess, a quirk of being bred, as it were. But anyway, that's my thought on that. Broken hardware is pretty cool. I'll see you next time. Peace.